Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 14 Plus and see how this phone is holding up in 2023. Now, I'm kind of laughing and smiling inside because this device has probably one of the saddest lifetimes of basically any iPhone of all time. When I look at an iPhone like an iPhone 14 Plus, it just sits at such an interesting spot. Now, for one, I truly do feel like this was a very good iPhone when it first came out. It's such a good device, but it's just so overpriced that it just makes almost zero sense to buy a device like this. But on top of it, when I look at a device like an iPhone 14 Plus, it just sits at such an awkward price. It's just so comparable to an iPhone 13 that it just doesn't even make any sense to buy. And on top of that, when you think about with the iPhone 13 Pro Max, that iPhone has probably gone down in price so much that it's not only cheaper than the iPhone 14 Plus, it's probably even cheaper than iPhone 14 as of this point. So, to be honest, it just doesn't really make any sense to buy a phone like an iPhone 14 Plus anymore because it's just kind of like just a strange device. But we'll talk about that throughout this video. If you want to buy some iPhones I would recommend buying though, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPhone 14 Plus, on the front, you are getting a very, very big and good sized 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR OLED panel. Now, this panel I think is honestly pretty good, and it's one of the biggest assets I would say for this type of phone. So it's 1284 by 2778. It's a 60 Hz panel, so nothing super crazy. But I looked at a screen like this, and I kind of do think that Apple did an overall good job on this type of device. You know, it looks good, but it's an interesting design because, again, it looks almost exactly the same as the iPhone 13 and iPhone 14 on the front. It's just bigger. It's almost like an iPhone XS Max in a way. But the issue I kind of have with this type of iPhone is that because it's so familiar designed with the other iPhones, even with an iPhone 13 Pro Max, those other iPhones are better deals because they're so much cheaper. So even though that is the case, there's another issue. This iPhone is also when you look at this iPhone, why would you even want to buy this iPhone when you can get something like an iPhone 14 Pro? That iPhone is only like $100 more expensive than this thing. So it makes even less sense to buy an iPhone like this. So it honestly just keeps getting weirder and weirder for this type of device. So that is another thing. On the bottom, you're getting your standard, lightning port, which is still perfectly fine. You're getting things like, a glass back, which is beautiful, a dual camera setup, which is honestly very cool as well. You're also getting things like IP certification, MagSafe charging, which is pretty cool. So you're still getting a lot of overlap. And personally, I've always liked a phone like this. I think it looks pretty good. There's really not too much to complain about here. And that was something that was really, really cool here. Now, that doesn't mean this is like a perfect phone. This is a phone that's still good. I still like it a lot. There's not too much to complain about. But that was always one thing that kind of threw me off, was that a phone like this at that current time could have probably been a little bit better if it did have like a 120 Hz panel, if it did have things like a maybe more better back, maybe like a frosted glass back, maybe a better camera setup. Those types of things I think go a long way. And with a device like the iPhone 14 Plus, I don't know. Like I said, I kind of look at it and I still kind of feel like Apple could have done a little bit of a better job with this type of device. So when it kind of comes down to that kind of covers it up for the most part. Now, another big thing for the iPhone 14, Plus for the most part, was the fact that this type of device, in my opinion, if I'm being completely honest, it does kind of, have a good camera. But the thing is that it's so similar, again, to an iPhone 13 that it just makes those devices seem like better deals rather than this actually looking like a good phone, basically. So you're getting a 12 megapixel wide and 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, which is awesome. You're also getting a, 4K at 60 lens on the back, 4K at 60 on the front, which is always good. But beyond that, there's not really a whole lot else going for this camera that the previous iPhone camera couldn't have done. Maybe there's some cool like integral cinematic mode things that are there now that we didn't have before. But even that, it's like, why would you even want to buy a phone like this for the camera when, again, you can buy an iPhone 13 Pro or 13 Pro Max for cheaper than this thing again? So it's like these types of things make less and less sense for this type of device, and it's never really been like that before. So personally for me, I feel like Apple could be doing a little bit of a better job there. And those types of things are so important because, again, when you're getting a device like an iPhone 14, you're just going to have to kind of keep that in the back of your head that the camera could have been better. Apple, could have done a little bit of a better job with these cameras. They're not bad cameras by any means, and I think they're still very, very more than capable. But again, keep that in the back of your head. Now, on top of that, another thing for the iPhone, 14 Plus for the most part, is with its software and longevity. This device is going to be lasting for a very, very long amount of time. And that's something that I've always liked about this type of device, that you're going to be getting basically a phone that's going to be here for quite a bit of time. So if you're in the market and you wanted a phone that's going to be lasting for many years to come, this is going to be one of those devices. It's basically going to be here today, and it's going to be here tomorrow. It's going to be the day after that, the year after that, the year after that. This device is going to be lasting for many, many years to come. And like I mentioned, that's always been something that I look at with these types of devices. If you're getting something like an iPhone 14 Plus, this is a device that's going to be lasting for a long period of time, and that by far is the best thing that you could be doing here. So in terms of software updates, that's easily one of the best assets for a phone like, any iPhone for that matter. So that kind of covers it up there too. Now, another thing going on with the iPhone 14 Plus, in my opinion, is with its performance. Now, this is definitely a really good asset for this type of device. So you're getting in, basically the Apple A15 bionic chip inside, which is the last generation of Apple chipsets, which Apple could have done better if I'm being honest. We're also getting 6 gigabytes of RAM, which is it's 50% more than what you were getting on the previous model. So I think that's a really cool thing. But like I mentioned, and I've said this already a few times, with a device like an iPhone 14 Plus, you're still getting kind of an outdated, chipset. It's the same one as the iPhone 13. So again, why would you get this iPhone when you can buy an iPhone 13 Pro Max that's almost cheaper than this thing that has the same chipset? Like, it just makes a less and less sense to buy this type of device, which is why the sales of this thing haven't really been doing that well in the first place either. So that's kind of another thing you have to keep in mind. There's just so many things to keep in mind with a device like that I just have to keep in the back of my head all of the time. Now, another thing going on for this type of device on top of that is basically with its performance. I think the performance is good. It's definitely not bad. But like I said, at the end of the day, you don't want to get a device that's going to be here today and then be kind of slower or the same speed as the previous generation flagship. So I think, again, that's kind of the big reason why this device isn't selling that well, because it seems like a lot more people are actually flocking more so to a device like the iPhone 14, Pro Max, the iPhone 14 Pro, or they're going for the iPhone like 13 or one of those types of devices for the most part. So I think that's probably like another minor thing to keep in mind as well. Not a big deal, but again, just one of those things to keep in mind. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. However, I will say the battery life has actually been pretty good. And throughout the last couple of months, it's been having a very solid battery life. So that is one thing that's actually probably one of the bigger assets with this type of device. So once again, if you're getting a phone like the iPhone 14 Plus, you're going to be getting a phone that's still going to be, having very good battery life for the next several months, several years. Like, it's going to be up there for a long, long period of time. And out of all the things I've heard people complaining about this type of device, not too many people have been complaining about the performance of this phone and the battery life. So to kind of sum up this video, what I'll tell you is, I definitely do think a phone like the iPhone 14 Plus is pretty much worth it for the most part. I think it's a great phone. I think it has a ton of capability, and it's still going to be supported for a long period of time. I just kind of think that a phone like the iPhone 14 Plus, it just is so weird because it's not as good of a phone as the iPhone 14 Pro Max, which is kind of what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like a cheaper version of that, but it's not even better than its previous flagship, which is the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and that one was a better phone almost in every single area than this device. So personally, I think there's a lot of Apple could do here, but I guess we're going to see what happens. I would say this phone's worth it, but I would probably say the iPhone 14 Pro Max or the iPhone 13 Pro Max are very much worth it. The 13 Pro Max makes so much sense to buy. Even the 12 Pro Max, maybe I would buy than this thing. In terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.